chosen against Wesley? Because Wesley is very solid, and perhaps he just wants to get Wesley out of his comfort zone.
That's right, especially with black. Actually, we've seen it with white already this tournament. Wesley so sometimes happy to just make draws, to be solid. And here with the black pieces, I think Wesley will be relatively happy with the outcome. As we see Anish Giri have a bit of a think here. White essentially needs to decide how and when to open up the position. Wow, that last move is very mysterious. I did not expect it. If we bring up the analysis board, we can see a couple of ideas for both sides. White's last move, very unexpected for me, is to play his queen across here. And I just have a feeling this is probably, as you mentioned, Jovanka, it is home preparation. This is an idea Anish Giri has prepared before. He brought this queen across. It looks like a very odd square blocking in this rook. This white rook now has nowhere to go. It's completely blocked in. But white has two ideas. He wants to bring his queen forward and create a kind of battery along this diagonal with the queen and bishop using teamwork, ganging up together against a weak black pawn. The other idea is to activate the other rook, maybe lining up this rook with the black queen. I think black, meanwhile, has to decide how is he going to develop his pieces. Black's bishop at the moment is a bit blocked. His rooks need to be connected to each other. This one is going to liven up, but promising start, lots of tension still at the moment. Okay, yeah. Wesley so gaining space in the centre there with a pawn.
So, yes, this has been seen before. This idea has been seen before, but only once. So we're definitely in Anish Giri's preparation. And now, after Wesley's response, we are actually completely new territory.
Wow, yeah. I mean, I'm learning something just as much as the people at home. This is something I've never seen before. It's very, very rare. Both sides had lots and lots of options in the earlier stages. And now with Anish Giri's last move, just pushing a pawn up, it looks very modest, but he's just preparing to push his other central pawn 2 squares forward. The white pawn there that usually starts in front of the queen. He's going to explode the centre, and he's arguing that white is more ready than black. And Wesley So decides to push forward. He's pushing another pawn forward. Wesley So is taking as much space as he can. We talk about space. If your pawns are further forward, you just have more space to manoeuvre your pieces. You have more squares, more scope to manoeuvre your pieces behind those pawns. So Wesley, he's pushing his pawns forward first with black. His pieces will come after. Meanwhile, Anish Giri, he has to justify the reason for that kind of slightly strange queen move. He has to justify allowing black to gain all this space.
Yeah, but it's very committal, you know. This is the thing with pawn moves, is that you can't take them back. And yes, it's true, it's gained a lot of space, but I also think it's a little bit risky because if it goes wrong, well, that's it. You know, he's too many weaknesses around the king, and no king wants to be surrounded by empty space. And you can see, like, Anish, it's very calm. He just ignored this kind of space and was like, OK, I'm going to play on the left side of the board. No big deal. Yeah,
that's right. You do touch on a key point there. Actually, when I first started the game, when I was a beginner, I used to just push all my pawns forward. But then it took me a long, long time to realise, but pawns, they're the only piece that don't move backwards, therefore they do create weaknesses behind them. Sometimes you want pawns covering squares, especially weak squares. You don't want your pieces tied down to them. That being said, I do like Wesley So's push of those pawns. Now he's just brought his other bishop out. Black's rooks are now connected. All of Black's pieces, they're on very nice active squares. I think Black will next bring the rooks towards the centre. Anish, he just needs to open things up. White, at the moment, is camped in his first 3 ranks. Yeah. That means for White, he definitely needs to take action quickly. You can't just slowly sit there and let your opponent suffocate you by pushing everything forward.
Yeah. You kind of have to think of these positions like a spring, you know. Okay, yes, you're cramped for a while, but then, you know, you're looking for a way to release it, and they have to make that break to explode it open. And I think we're seeing stage 1 being implemented there. The queen and the bishop have aligned themselves on that beautiful long diagonal.
That's right. And we mentioned a couple of plans earlier on. White has actually used both of those plans. White has pushed his rook across, and he's lined up his queen and dark squared bishop along the same diagonal. White was eyeing up one of Black's central pawns there. Therefore, Black does defend that central pawn with his bishop. Black's bishop's very nice in the centre of the board. Yeah, I think this one is still in the balance. As Jovanka mentioned, it's like a spring. White is so flexible. He will jump forward at some point. It's just about whether Wesley So, as Black, is ready for those developments, ready for some action to happen.
All right. Well, we do know that Anish Giri needs to strike back after losing. in the last round against Levon Aroni and Wesley. So he seems very confident. And he also said that going into this tournament after winning the last one. He's played so much online chess over the last year. He's gotten very confident with it. And he's also said that, you know, starting out the year, he didn't even have a nice computer mouse, and he only had like a very small laptop. He bought a big screen. He's really getting into this online format, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see, you know, with his big success at the Skilling Open, it's kind of reaped its rewards. He's definitely into it, and he has such a beautiful style, so natural. He knows where to put his pieces, and it just really suits the online game. It's just the only thing with Wesley is that he's a little bit too pragmatic for his own good. You know, when you saw that against Magnus Carlsen, he could have played on, pushed Magnus a little bit harder, and he chose not to. So, yeah, we will see. But definitely, I love seeing Wesley play. It's beautiful.
That's right. I mean, both of these players, actually, they both rarely ever lose. It's just because they just have such a nice, fluid style. All of their pieces, you never see either of them, especially Wesley, actually, you never see them with a bad piece on the board. They talk to their pieces, they centralise everything, they coordinate them, keep everything nicely guarded. And, yeah, I mean, especially with Wesley as well. He just never blunders. He sees everything. The only way to beat him is to slowly accumulate lots of strategic edges and then hope that eventually that's enough. But he's very tenacious. And Anish Giri as well. He does draw a lot of games traditionally, but lately he's been a bit more ambitious, a bit more aggressive. And this opening shows that despite the white knight retreating, that is kind of an aggressive move. That knight will jump forward a bit later on. And also the bishop, the white bishop in front of white's king there, it's now opened up that diagonal. That bishop's scope has improved. Its line of vision has improved. So, yeah.
But we see the bar. It's just completely in the middle, saying this is completely a draw right now. Maybe you could show us on the analysis board. I mean, do they have any possibilities to sort of push for the win?
Yeah.
What should they do here to be able to win the game?
Definitely. The bar says it's in the middle, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a draw. It just means that the position is equal. And even being equal doesn't necessarily mean that the position is, in fact, just equal, because you can still have plenty to play for. There's still the possibility of going wrong. And then, you know, on the flip side, you also have positions where there's like nothing can go wrong. And this, I'm afraid, is going to be one of those positions where absolutely everything will be there to play for.
That's right. There's so much tension. And at the moment, the one thing I like about white's pieces are these bishops. This bishop just has so much scope on a long diagonal. This is actually the longest diagonal in chess. You want your bishops on these very, very nice lines. Bishops are also long-range pieces. And as well, white's queen and bishop lined up together. Black's last move, bringing his rook towards the centre. We mentioned Wesley, so he never forgets any piece. He's improved his worst-placed piece. I think it's time for Anish Giri to decide. Does he go for something a bit controversial? Does he capture this knight to weaken the central pawn? Instead, he just pushes forward.
Oh, look at the bar.
That last move, I don't like it at all. We said that Anish Giri needs to push forward. Now this pawn, I mean, it's advanced one square, so it should be on a better square, but I think he's actually worse in this pawn. It's eyed up by the black rook, and now white's knight, I thought it wanted to jump forward a bit later on. Now it's completely passive. It's tied down to the defense of this pawn. We said knights on the edge, fall off the hedge, knights on the rim are dim. This white knight, it only controls 4 squares rather than the traditional 8. It's very badly placed, and I think it's time for Wesley So to exchange off this beautiful bishop that we were talking about, this white bishop. It's also the best defender of white's king right now.
Yeah.
So Wesley So could exchange that off. We see Stockfish disagrees with me slightly, but it also wants to go for the same idea. It wants to attack the white king.
Yeah, and now I think that we're going to see your plan put into operation, because if we bear in mind Wesley's last move, which was centralising the rook, it's getting that exchange lined up, and it's such a classical kind of manoeuvre that you exchange off this bishop because it weakens the king. And you remember what we said about like the king having lots of squares around it, being super uncomfortable. You always have to worry about a king in that kind of situation. And one thing that really worries me is that the queen is on the left side of the board, the white king is on the right side of the board. Not happy there, and you have to combine that with white's lack of space. Yes, I think something has gone wrong for Anish.
Yeah, the last 2 moves in conjunction with each other, I don't think they're very consistent. And there we see, okay, Wesley, he has followed, he's chosen the line that, the move that I wanted him to play. He's just trying to exchange off one of white's better pieces, that bishop in front of white's king. Just white's pieces, they're all in the first 3 ranks. They're so cramped. What is that white rook doing, for example, in the corner there, on the bottom left corner? It's just doing nothing right now. So it will become a race. Can Wesley So attack white's king before white gets organised?
Yeah.
I think yes, but...
Well, we have it. David thinks yes. I think yes. Well, what do you at home think? You know, join in the fun, join in the conversation and answer the question. Do you think Wesley will be able to punish Anish's passive play? Well, if you think something, please get involved. And you can do this by tweeting us by using the hashtag #ChessChamps.
Okay, interesting move here. We see the bar shift even more over to Wesley So's side with Anish's pawn move.
That's right. And Anish, I think he was getting a bit desperate here. He's just trying to distract black from a potential attack on the right side. So Anish, he pushed a pawn on the left there. He's trying to open things up for those white rooks, which at the moment are just doing absolutely nothing. We do see the bishops leave the board in the meantime. And Wesley, he has options. He can just allow a trade of one set of pawns on that left side, but sooner or later, he should just start pushing those pawns towards the white king. Black's pawns in the centre there, very nicely placed, but they'll be even stronger if they push forward. Lots and lots of options for Wesley. So I think there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
I think he's got lots of...
So you think if you were playing black, would you just go immediately for the kill? Because I would.
You would?
I would pick up my pawn and I would start trying to go for an attack immediately.
Yeah, that's right. And maybe if we bring up the board just to see how he might attack, how Wesley So might attack. I think Jovanka is a big fan of just pushing this pawn forward, trying to open up a line for the black rook towards the white king. If a pawn gets further down, a pawn on this kind of square is always going to be checkmating ideas against the white king, even if it involves a sacrifice. Maybe Wesley So he doesn't like to take too many risks. Maybe he'll deal with this tension first. Maybe he'll just capture a pawn. White would attack the rook. Maybe he'll just move this rook. And I think Wesley, he doesn't need to rush even. His position is that good, whether he goes directly for the king or whether he doesn't. And actually, those 2 moves are the top choices of the computer right now.
All right, well, it is intense. It is Wesley So in the move. He's been thinking for almost 2 minutes in his last move. Now, we have been seeing some graphics on Airthings. Now, Airthings, we've partnered up with Airthings for this tournament and for the Champions Chess Tour. And it's actually following the air quality where the players are sitting. And we're not right now in the bottom of the screen seeing the air quality where Anish Giri is sitting. And I can see a red cloud there, which is not, the red is not good. You want all the things to be green. So it's not the best air quality for Anish Giri right now. We'll take a look at Wesley So as well, but we do have some moves, David.
That's right. So just as predicted, we've seen a pair of pawns leave the board, and black's rook was under attack from white's bishop, so that rook has jumped forward 1 square. Wesley So still in control. Meanwhile, we also see his air quality levels. I was actually very lucky. I got to talk to some people from Airthings, and I heard that the carbon dioxide levels, you definitely want them under 1,000. Yeah, and
really?
I think ideally closer to 500, if I remember correctly. And so even Wesley So, it's not red there, the carbon dioxide levels on the left. We see 875, but I think it's still not ideal.
Yeah, but for Anish Giri, it was worse. It was over 1,000, as you said. That was red. And I mean, one of the most important things for chess players when they go into these online formats, playing from home, must be the air quality where they're sitting. It must have a huge amount to say.
That's right. You want fresh air. You want your brain working properly. You don't want to kind of get a foggy mind. And air quality is definitely a big factor. It'll be interesting to see what the players kind of think about this as well, whether they maybe thought that this affected their thinking or whether the air quality in the room just matches up with the critical moments in the game.
Yeah, definitely the stress and everything. So we do have a slight criticism from Wesley So's play from Bob Beakey. He says Wesley obviously has the skill and vision, but he just lacks that extra gumption. He needs to get more ruthless and punish his opponents more. Hashtag #ChessChamps. But having said that, what move did we see on the board? You know, we asked from Wesley and he's now about to deliver because he has pushed his pawn forward and he wants to take a wrecking ball to white's king. I love that kind of chess.
Exactly. That pawn will act as a battering ram. It will just explode open the kind of safe structure that white has built around his king right now. That will be safe no longer. Black's pawn it will open up some lines, even if black has to sacrifice something, sacrifice a pawn or two. As long as he can open up lines towards White's king, I think Wesley will be very happy. This isn't maybe the traditional Wesley So style to go directly for the attack, but I think he's very adaptable. If the opponent allows him to attack, why not?
Exactly.
And, meanwhile, Anish Giri is in big trouble. That white rook in the bottom left-hand corner, I've talked about it, it's just not participating in the action. All of black's pieces are they're just perfectly placed. They're heading towards the centre.
Yeah.
The last 5-10 moves have definitely gone in Wesley So's favour.
Yes. And one of the things that we see in poker is that when you go wrong, you really go wrong, and you kind of call that tilting. And this is something that we see in online chess, that when you lose one game that perhaps you weren't expecting to lose, the second game is also a disaster, and maybe even the third game, and then you steady the ship and things start to happen. But
we did see that with Anish Giri on the last day of the preliminaries in the first tournament. He started losing, and then everything almost fell apart for him.
And he barely qualified to the knockout stages. I mean, are we seeing something similar?
Yeah, he's got to make sure it doesn't spiral out of control. I mean, I liked his opening strategy originally. I just like the kind of ambition behind the strategy, but the last few moves, it maybe shows that he didn't understand the ideas as deeply as Wesley So, and I think he's just missed the moment for White. He just needs to find a way to survive this game, essentially. He needs to build up some defence around his king, needs to find a way to stop Wesley So from attacking him. I mean, it's much easier to say than actually do it, but if he survives this game, he'll be on a high, and maybe he'll be able to carry that momentum through. If he loses again, that's...
And by surviving, because traditionally when you try to survive, you can have two approaches, which is A, you just mix up the position, make it as mad as possible, or another one is like, I learned some football terms recently, park the bus, where you throw every single piece you have towards the direction of the king. You're like, no, you're not going to get through. So what kind of strategy would you see from Anish here?
Yeah, it's difficult. I would love to park the bus in front of the goal right now and just kind of, if White's rooks, if you imagine them on the right side of the board, the queen on the right, the knight on the right, then White's king would feel nice and safe. But that takes 6-7 moves to park all the pieces on that side. And meanwhile, Wesley So, he's immediately threatening to open up some lines, immediately going for the for the white king. So
parking the bus. Jose Mourinho, the football coach, who is most known for parking the bus. Now, what football approach or what football coach, manager do you think would be best at chess, David?
That's hard. I did see this documentary, this Amazon documentary with Jose Mourinho, and just his motivational style was very interesting. I think he'd be great as a chess coach, maybe not as a player, but that's difficult.
Yeah.
Alex Ferguson was always my idol.
Yes, he was quite mean, you know. He used to do the hairdryer treatment where during the game.
What is that?
Where he basically scolded the players and just going, you're not pulling your weight. And I mean, I really like this term actually for chess, you know, I think Anish should have a word with his pieces on the left side and go, what are you guys doing?
Should have a manager approach to this now and talk to his players.
Yes, exactly. And I also liked Alex Ferguson. I grew up with him, but he's a bit mean.
Well, you actually played a Premier League football player.
I did.
Just a few weeks ago, Jovanka.
I did.
Tell us about that.
It was a lot of fun. So Crystal Palace approached me and they said, hey, you know, you're local to the area. You were born in South London. One of our players would like to play a game of chess against you. And I was like, OK, cool. And, you know, I gave them time odds. And then I felt a bit guilty because he was like, it was Martin. I played Martin Kelly. He was a great defender. And, then I had to hustle him a little bit. But it was a lot of fun. And, he kind of... We discussed a little bit about, like, these football expressions and footballing strategy, how it can be applicable to chess. And, I think the video is on Chess24, actually.
Yes, we're going to try to show it here in the broadcast as well, obviously. But, OK, I just took a glance at the bar and it just shifted completely way over to Wesley So's side. What's happening, David?
Yeah, it's not looking good for Anish Giri right now. And we see the Stockfish evaluations or the suggestions below the board. And the bad news for Anish Giri as white is that Black has at least 3 moves, I think plenty more, which give a huge advantage. That means that Wesley So will not make a mistake. He will not let this advantage slip. And if we bring up the board, we can see why Black is doing so well. This last move by White, just shuffling the rook across, I kept talking about how bad this piece was in the corner. He's tried to improve it slightly, He looked like he's attacking a pawn, but actually that's not threatening a pawn at all. White is attacking this pawn with 2 pieces, the queen and the rook, but black is also defending it with 2 pieces. And that means that white would lose material if he captures that first. Black is defending that pawn enough times. So actually Anish Giri's last move, improving that rook, it doesn't actually do anything. So he's given Wesley So a free move to attack. What I would do, and what the computer suggests now, is to just open up a line for the black rook, maybe by trading a couple of pawns. And now this rook is extremely strong. I would love to maybe bring the other rook, a bit of teamwork, pair them up together, line them up against this white pawn, very close to the king. Another thing you could do is just bring your queen across 1 square and maybe use this queen as well to attack the white king. All of black's pieces will slowly start moving towards that white king. Meanwhile, this piece is so bad at the bottom of the board. It's doing nothing. It's just doing a defensive job. It can't really jump forward again. Otherwise, it will just be targeted. One bad piece makes a position bad sometimes, and white's knight is the problem.
Absolutely. And one thing that's super important that Wesley has to do is we came up with a nice little rhyme for this. It's like teamwork makes the dream work. And yeah, this is absolutely in Wesley's interest. He needs to be using all of his pieces to start attacking the king because he cannot let his advantage dissipate.
That's right. I don't think his advantage will dissipate. Knowing him, he loves improving those pieces slowly. And the good thing for black is there's no rush. White's knight is going to be stuck there for a long time. So he will, as black, have 4 or 5 moves to get ready for an attack. It's just about, as Ivanka mentions, that teamwork, using the rooks together, using the queen, using the knight. And actually, queen and knight are the dream attacking combo. And knight is the only piece that does something that the queen can't. So black still has that queen and knight on the board. If black's queen and knight can jump towards white's king somehow, that will spell the end. So, yeah, very, very tricky. I expect to see Wesley So. I was going to say I expect him to make a move soon. He spent 3 minutes on that. He's just trying to figure out how to improve his pieces. Now it's time for black to bring his queen into the game, and therefore he shuffles his queen across 1 square. It wants to leap forward and attack that white king. It's looking desperate for Anish Giri. The problem is his rooks have no targets. He brings his queen forward. He's trying to stop black from advancing his own queen. Queens are great in the center of the board as well, as long as they won't get attacked too much. But that white queen is very much doing a defensive job. It's got no targets. Everything it tries to attack is defended. Actually, every single piece of black's now is defended. The coordination there. Wesley So, he just does this so smoothly. You never see any piece out of place, any piece kind of not coordinated with the rest of his army.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, white's queen is now in the black half, but the rooks are on the left, the king is on the right.
There's so much danger in the white position. It's just unbelievable, you know. And the funny thing is that if you look at white's king, you can see that it's super weak on the light squares. And look where Wesley has placed his queen. It's looking in the center, but it's also looking all the way towards the white king. So I am just really loving where this is going. You know, so many attacking possibilities.
Yeah, and do you know what I would create now, Ivanka? I would create one of your favourite pieces, the Octo Knight.
Oh.
If we bring up the analysis board, we can see one of Wesley's main options here. Maybe he can exchange a pair of pawns. I would do this sooner or later, probably just to open up this line for the rook. And once he's done this, it's time for black to improve another piece. This knight, it's doing a good job. It's nicely protected by a pawn, but it does an even better job in the centre of the board. This knight could jump in, blocking white's pawn, but this knight is now dominant. Look at how many squares it creates. We call it an octo knight because it controls 8 squares. It controls everything. It's nicely defended by the rook and the queen. Next, black will start bringing his rook over, his queen over. OK, he's done it. He's moved that knight immediately. He hasn't traded pawns yet. That knight jumps forward. And I think this knight is just so dominant that it will spell the end for Anish Giri.
And Wesley has a lot of support on Twitter. We have a tweet from Nebi. He says, "Go, Wesley. Wow. Watching chess instead of writing my paper." Yes, cheering from the Philippines. Yes, hello to you too.
Fantastic. Philippines, all right.
Yeah, that's right. Wesley So, I mean, he plays for America now. He lives in America, but yeah, he used to play for the Philippines. He grew up in the Philippines, and he's got a huge fan base there. Every time I log onto a chess website, there's hundreds of comments from Filipino chess fans. And
fantastic.
Yeah, maybe that just gives him that extra energy.
Well, he needs it because it's early in the morning for Wesley. So, well, not that early anymore. It's around 10 o'clock or something like that in AM for Wesley So. Anish Giri playing from the Netherlands. So it's around 5:30 for Anish Giri as Wesley So made his move.
That's right. And actually, wow. Anish Giri, he's just resigned. That's a very early resignation. He's given up much earlier than most of us would. But the position is so hopeless. White's king is actually in check. He would have to, I think, give up some pieces just to survive. I mean, maybe we'll show that a bit later, why he resigned, but that is shocking. I've never seen Anish Giri lose so badly with White before.
Wow, he seems extremely low on confidence.
Yeah, and to lose in 25 moves with the white pieces, it's at this level, it's unheard of. So, yeah, he's definitely looking at where he went wrong. To be honest, I agree with David. David touched on this thing that, you know, Anish chose an opening that perhaps he didn't quite understand all the subtleties and he just went too passive.
All right, a lot of games going on. We will go over this very quick resignation from Anish Giri later on, but we have to keep following round 3 in the Air Things Masters, and we'll now go to the game between Magnus Carlsen and Timur Rajabov. And, well, not much to say about the bar here. What is it looking like, David?
Yeah, we do see that the bar gives a tiny, tiny advantage for White. A quick material count, though. That's the first thing I do in every position. I always